Hello, Bobby Torres of Frightbox recording here. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I prep my guitar tracks for reamping. And more specifically, how I prep a bunch of guitar tracks across an entire album or EP for reamping, and how I keep the process nice and efficient. Because as you know, if you're working with, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 songs, that's a lot of guitar tracks. And people often ask me how I go about reamping all of these tracks because it's so overwhelming. Now, before we begin, I just want to let you know, if you're looking to increase the production value of your guitar tracks, you can have instant access to my straight, simple, and to the point masterclass called the Guitar Production Workshop. In the workshop, I show you my approach for dialing in a great metal guitar tone at the source, as well as how I go about editing my heavy guitars, and finally, my simple and straight to the point approach for mixing heavy guitars. Again, you can have instant access to the workshop. There's a link below in this video's description. Now, this video is being shot live with members of my Frightbox Mixcrypt community. So members will be jumping in and asking questions throughout this stream. And I hope you enjoy the video. So here's the deal. I have to reamp an entire album's worth of guitar tracks tomorrow. Now, back in the day, this would seem so overwhelming, especially when you're dealing with 7 songs, 10 songs, 15 songs, whatever. It could become overwhelming, right? How do you know what tracks to send out to what outputs? Well, over the years, I've come up with a system that's so simple, streamlines my workflow, and just makes the entire thing much quicker and just much more enjoyable, to be honest with you. So the album is almost done. On Sunday, we have to do a few extra vocal tracks. We have a guest vocalist coming in, but all of the guitars are done, minus feedback. We have to record some extra feedback tracks. But aside from that, all of the guitars are pretty much done. For me, I generally only reamp rhythm guitars because lead guitars, especially in a production like this, the leads are kind of more like icing on the cake, background elements, reinforcement elements. So the main bulk of the guitar sound is coming from the rhythm guitars. And in this production, we have just one rhythm guitar on the left, one rhythm guitar on the right, and we're going to create a nice wide guitar sound just out of those two performances. For me, less is more. I'm not really the biggest fan of quad tracking, especially for this kind of music where I want to hear every note crystal clear. So with that being said, now if we look in my little folder here, we have 10 folders. Now there's a folder here called Reamp. That's actually the reamp session from 2 years ago. There are 2 songs in here that are going to be on the album that we fully produced 2 years ago. And then recently, the guys have come into the studio and we tracked and did 7 more songs. So in short, tomorrow I have to reamp 7 songs worth of guitar tracks all in one go. And I don't have all day to do it. I don't have hours upon hours upon hours. I have a lot going on at once. I'm also mixing an entire other album right now. So again, I have to be very efficient. So what I'm going to do here and what you're going to witness is me going through all of these songs, how I prep the files, my approach to prepping the files, and how I load them into a separate DAW session. And you can do this within any DAW. So everything is nice and even, and I can just press play on my space bar once I have my tone dialed in and re-record all of the guitars back into my DAW, and they're ready to be mixed. So without any further ado, let's jump into the first song here. Blossom is a song that we just produced and we just recorded in the studio. So let's dive into Blossom. All right, so here we are in Blossom. Now, as you can see, there's stuff all over the place, right? Now, most of my mixes, when you see my mixes, they're very nice and organized. And that's honestly after the tracking is all wrapped up. I'll go in and really dial in and clean things up. That way I can mix with efficiency and not be bogged down by tracks all over the place. I like things to be organized and simple, just like engineers would do back in the analog days when you only had a 24-track tape machine and you only had 24 tracks to work with. I kind of try and stay within that realm of thinking and with that approach. So with that being said, now, again, I'm not going to reamp. If you look here, we have a lead guitar here. We have a clean guitar here, 2 clean guitars, another lead, and then another lead. So that's why you see a bunch of these tracks. These are all going to be simplified. But the bread and butter here are going to be our rhythm guitar tracks. And now, let me just say this. All of the guitar tones right now are just amp sims. Like I'm using this STL amp hub, but they're going to be used on the lead guitars. I'm going to print them and commit them to audio once the production is officially finished after Sunday. But the rhythm guitars, I want to use his amp, not because I have to, Well, because it's fun. And these are my rhythm guitars, my heavy rhythm guitars. So now there are no rhythm guitars at the beginning of this song. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight a little bit before the rhythm guitars kick in, all the way through to where they end. And I'm going to quickly fade, just add fades. I'm going to consolidate them. So now I have two sets of whole files. But here's where a lot of people go wrong. They don't name files. Stuff is random and all over the place, which mine kind of is now. That's why I'm cleaning this up. Now I'm going to name these files so I could prep them for reamping. And I'm going to do this on a per song basis. And then I'm going to show you how I import them into a clean session, which will be reamped tomorrow. So now here's the way I like to name these. The file is called LDI_01. I'm going to change it to Blossom LDI. So Blossom LDI. So I know when I look at all my files in my giant reamp session, my Blossom tracks are from the song Blossom. Okay. So I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to go to my right DI track. And this one's going to be called Blossom RDI. And I am done in this song. Everything's organized. I know in my audio files folder, if we look here, I have two tracks or two files, Blossom RDI and Blossom LDI. And those are going to come in handy in a little while once I go through all the songs. Okay, there's a song here called George Archangel. That was produced, fully mixed and mastered 2 years ago. It's going to be on the album. But obviously, I don't have to reamp this song. I did it 2 years ago. So now we have to do the rest of the songs. So there's another song here called Glorious, which is actually a really good tune. Okay, Keith, good question. You're asking if I'm reamping for tone or do the band's requesting it. This band, they are so cool, man. I'm doing it because I feel like it, to be honest with you. I could just use the amp sim tones and no one would ever know in a million years. I'm a guitar player. And, you know, not only that, but these guys are really a great band and they sound good live. They use like Mesa Boogie combo amps and I like the way they sound. So I'm going to try and capture what they sound like. You know, I'm good with a 5150. I can make that work in pretty much any rock or metal production, but they use these, I think they're the rectifiers, but I think they're the combo version. All right, so let's open up Glorious, tons of leads, all that stuff. I'm going to be using an amp sim just for all that because it's background stuff. But we do have the main left and right guitars here. I'm highlighting before the tracks, after the tracks, do a quick fade. I have everything highlighted. I went in and make sure all of my fades are intact. Let's zoom in just to be sure. Okay. And let's consolidate. So we have whole files. Now, the song is called Glorious, or at least that's the working title. So I'm going to name this Glorious, LDI for the left DI. And then for the right DI, Glorious, RDI. Bingo. So we're done. Glorious is prepped. And again, I like to be really, really careful. I go into my audio files folder, Glorious RDI, Glorious LDI. So those two tracks are prepped. So I'm going to make a new session and I'm going to call it Reamp 2. Okay. Now check this out, guys. This is so simple. I'm going to have one track for tomorrow. Well, there's going to be more than one track, but let's do all the tracks. So this is going to just be my DI track, right? And I think I'm going to mic the cab with 2 mics just because I feel like it. So I'm going to just make those tracks now. And one's going to be a 57. So I'm going to call it 57-1. The other one's going to be the 609-1. I'm not doing that today. That's something I'm going to be doing tomorrow, but I like to be prepared, even though, you know, we're not recording anything today, but this preparation is key. You know, it's going to make things so much smoother tomorrow so I could focus on just getting the tones dialed in, pressing spacebar while it records and going and eating Mexican food or something. So, okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to line up all of these DI tracks on one single file, on one single track in my DAW in preparation for tomorrow. So here's my Pro Tools session. Okay. Let me go back to the folder. Where are we? Poeta. And the first song we did was Blossom. So here we are in Blossom in my audio files folder, Blossom RDI. That's going to be first. I'm importing it into Pro Tools and then Blossom LDI. Bam. Now it's key for me to not leave too much space in between these files. I want a little bit of space, but not too much space because then the reamp is going to take an eternity. Because remember, reamping happens in real time. These tracks are being sent out through my interface at the studio into a reamp box, which is taking a low impedance line level signal and converting it into a high impedance instrument level signal, which is like the guitar being plugged into the amp for real. So, and if you listen to these tracks, here's the left side of Blossom. That's what it sounds like. but it's going to be heavy and distorted when it goes through the actual real amp, which I'll dial in tomorrow. Okay, so we've got Blossom LDI, Blossom RDI, Glorious. Let's go to audio files. Same exact thing. Drag that in. Left side, right side. Make them nice and close. Okay, we got a few more songs to go. Okay, now sometimes when I'm zoomed out, it's hard to tell. It looks like they're close, but they're not. And again, I don't feel like adding an extra hour to my session time tomorrow because I've left too much of a space between tracks. Close into gaps, close into gaps. Do you like these streams? Awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. Like I said, it makes my job even more fun. It's fun to have you guys here while I'm doing these mundane tasks, but honestly, this is valuable stuff. I wish I knew this when I started. Back when I would reamp, back in the day, I would do it in the session and then I'd miss parts. It was a disaster, but these are things I've learned through experience. Now, I'm just gonna say it here just to be super clear. Obviously, all of these tracks are individual files, right? So this is Blossom left, this is Blossom right. When they're reamped, I'm gonna have giant reamp files, two tracks each, 2 mic placements, right? So then I have to go in when it's done and I have to cut those up and then re-import the left and right for each song into the original sessions. And then obviously they'll be panned and everything else. So I keep them on one track like this just because it's easier. I can literally press record on my DAW, leave the studio for an hour, come back and it's done. Or actually, let's see, just for fun, let's see how long all of the songs are. Yeah, it's about 50 minutes. So I'll take your questions now before we wrap this up. And then I'm glad you guys got to hang out. This has been a lot of fun. So Marcus asks, how would you do it if you want the L sound a bit different from the R? Ooh, very good. Different amps or just different mix of those 2 mics? Dude, that's an awesome question. Now, again, I like to be efficient. So what I like to do, let's say I'm working with a band and I'm just going to come up with a hypothetical situation. Let's say I'm not sure if I want a different tone on each side. So let's say I want to cover all of my bases. Something that I like to do a lot is I like to use the same tone on both sides, but use a different microphone on each side or different mic placement on each side. So the obvious way to do that in a simple way is to just record with multiple microphones. For example, I'm going to be using, so far, maybe I'll change my mind tomorrow, I'm using a 57 and a 609. So I'm recording the whole album, but those 2 microphones. When I mix the album, I might decide on the left side, I'm only going to use the 57, and on the right side, I'm only going to use the 609, and I'm going to have a nice wide stereo spread because the 2 different microphones are A, in a different mic placement, and B, they are different microphones, so they have different characteristics. But I have my bases covered because all of the guitar tracks, all the rhythm guitars were recorded with those 2 mics. Here's another scenario. If you want to get crazy. Actually, I did an album with a band called Tombs last year. When we did the album, they weren't sure if they wanted to use a Mesa dual rectifier or a 5150. So I reamped the entire album through both amps with 2 mic placements or 3 mic placements with both amps. So then I had all the rhythm guitar tracks. I had 2 different sounds, 3 different mic placements per sound. And the funny thing is I did all of this. I ended up going with I think I went only with the dual rec because it sounded cool. I went only with using the dual rec, and I think it was the same 57 on each side, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So there you go. That's what I would do. Hopefully that makes sense, Marcus. Let me know if you have any questions about that. But that's how I like to cover my bases. Now, I rarely will use more than 1 amp, but you know, that gave me flexibility. Let's say when I mixed that Tombs album, I could say, oh, I like the dual rec on the left side with 57A, and I like the sound of the 5150 on the right side with maybe 57 number 3 from the 3 that I recorded. You know, the difference in phase between the mics, the different characteristics of the 2 different heads. Maybe it would give me the sound I wanted. But in that case, I ended up not using any of that. It was the same mic on both sides, and I think the same head on both sides, like I said. Hopefully that makes sense. Great question, man. Great question. All right, Lee, it's been a blast. Guys, I've had a blast. Thank you for hanging out, and I'll be seeing you real soon, and thanks for hanging out. If you found this video helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And do not forget to click the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload one of my weekly videos on all things metal and rock production. If you're interested in some Frightbox swag, we got t-shirts, mugs, and a ton of other cool stuff on the way. There's a link below to the Frightbox merch store in this video's description. And again, you can have instant access to my direct and to-the-point guitar production workshop where I share with you my approach for dialing in a metal guitar tone at the source, how I go about editing my metal guitar tones, and finally, my simple and straight to the point approach for mixing heavy guitar tracks. You can have instant access to the workshop. There's a link below in this video's description. Until next time, happy mixing.